Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 10 of the History Made Awesome podcast. It is currently 11/17/2017. We're doing a Friday podcast because my week was extremely crazy, and hopefully it ends on a good note. And we're back again with Ben, who's joining back again. So, Ben, how is things going? How is everything going?
Things are going well. Just usual school stuff. Had an exam today.
Ooh,
I got vaccinated a couple days ago for my trip to Thailand.
sweet. That's awesome. So everything else is pretty good. Everything's going well.
Everything's going okay. I was super stressed this week, but now it's better.
For myself, I guess it's a good note for myself is that um, I guess we're having like a lot of our papers due like on Monday and Tuesday, at least for like two of my classes. So that means that my Thanksgiving is gonna be a lot smoother, a lot cleaner in terms of like be able to like just hang out with the fam. That good. So I was really pushing myself to kind of get my first drafts in, like on Friday and Thursday, respectively, so I can basically when I actually are on my weekend, I'm just editing. And actually, right now, I have to turn in my second draft for a paper that's due on Monday. It's cool because the professor allows us to send him our papers through email, and he'll look at it. But he says like on Saturdays, like because our papers due on Monday, that if he sees it before after before not before he wakes up, but like when he wakes up and he sees it, he'll look at it. And then he says like after that, he says he might get to it, but he says if you email it like in the morning on Saturdays, he'll definitely look at it and give you some feedback. So I went on there Wednesday and then got him to look at it and tell me look at some stuff. And then I'm currently working on it now. And yeah, I just love like putting in drafts early because like the process of doing it is a lot easier for myself. And yeah, for like the way I draft papers is like I think people do different things. People do like outlines, which is cool. What I found actually recently is I like doing notes. So like I just plug ideas like okay, use this source, use this source, and like the page number, and kind of get like just a brain drain of like what I want, and then on the paper I could just kind of like just type out like have some basic structure, and then just kind of list the basic ideas, and then I showed the professor or whatever like what I kind of got going on, and then of course I if the ideas are good, I just then start editing it. So hopefully I can just do the editing part of just making the sentence structure and grammar better. And yeah, so that's basically my weekend. So I was kind of really busy trying to get those first drafts in. But
So what classes are these for?
so right now I'm taking Russian Revolution. So that's papers due on Monday. It's only like 400 to 750 words. But
Hmm.
yeah, of course, you have to be really concise with what you're saying, and you have to provide a good argument with what you're saying. So it's not like a walk in the park.
Mhm.
Um, but it's decent. And then on Tuesday, I have a paper due for anthropology of religions, which is like a 4 to 5, like a 4 pager almost, kind of.
Okay.
So it's a kind of short one. But then again, you have to still put quality in it. And that's the funny thing, like you might take these assignments like off because you think, oh, it's nothing, it's only 400 words, but you have to like really be, it has to be high quality writing. You just can't just just do it in one day. Um, that's what I've kind of found is that I try to take everything seriously. So hopefully by the time the end of the quarter comes, if I screw up on any assignment, I have points to get myself at an A. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now.
Hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, the week's going very well. It's Friday was tough for a lot of people. My Thursday night was very tough. I pretty much had I start school at like 6:40 and not 6:40. I get up like at 6:20. I get like maybe 6 hours, 5 hours of sleep or so, 5 hours and 30 minutes of sleep, and I get to school like around every single day. I get to school around like 8ish, kind of
Mhm.
around the time 8ish, something like that. And so I get my breakfast, and then I go and go to class. And usually I end, except for Mondays and Thursdays, I stay at school like around 6 maybe. That's kind of like as long as I stay at school. Except I had to now do a 6 o'clock on a Wednesday. So basically, I was at school from like 6:20, like from 8 to like 6 on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And Tuesday was the only day I actually got off. And of course, I work out after that. So like my Thursday workout was just like I'm just gonna get something in, and I had to cut one workout of my thing. So I got like 6 hours of sleep last night, and I woke up, those wake ups where you're like, oh my goodness, I have to go to school today, kind of wake
Yeah.
ups. Like I was like, I gotta crawl myself out of the bed. So I crawl myself out of bed, And I get there and I get my breakfast and I'm feeling kind of good. And then I get to class and you can kind of tell the people are like don't want to be there. Like some kids are like trying to fall asleep and all that stuff. And I feel like that just pushes me even more because like I don't want to be that person. Like I don't want to be
Mm.
the person dozing off. I don't want to be that weak person. So I kind of like I'm just gonna be better than you kind of thing.
Okay.
I'm just gonna crush it today. And so like I felt really good coming out of class and like uh I got my lunch. Got to see my person. Not I know the personal librarian at the library, so I had him
Hmm.
find me some sources for my research. So he was really awesome with that. Showed me some interesting things about how the library works and how they what's it called procure their books and things of that nature. So it was really cool from him. And then I got my lunch and then did some homework and got home and trying to enjoy some personal time. And then got Star Wars Battlefront 2. Have you been hearing anything on that as we jump into
Uh,
the news?
yeah. Are you talking about like the big controversy around it,
The
or?
big controversy around it.
Yeah. I came across that like on accident, and I didn't really actually look into it. I more just read everyone's comments on it because it was
Yeah.
more entertaining than actually trying. I was trying to figure out what was going on based on what people were saying instead of just looking into it.
Mhm.
It sounded like they were charging money to
Yeah.
play as certain characters.
Yeah. So I'll kind of
Is
lay it
that what
down.
it was?
I'll kind of lay it down. So I actually bought Battlefront 2 knowing that was the case, how they were doing those things, because I didn't really
Mm-hmm.
give a shit. It's Star Wars. I'm gonna play it, and
Okay.
like I don't know, like games have had that type of feature, and I'll explain the feature to everybody right now. But basically, the feature is that like to improve your character or to improve the starship in the game, the
Mm-hmm.
only way to do that is through cards, and the only way to procure cards is either through crafting it using like a certain resource, which is like crafting parts. But
Mm-hmm.
it's really hard to get those parts because you after matching you get like 5 or 10 after a match, and like to craft a card it's like 40 of those points. And of course
Okay.
to craft the higher tier of that card, which is like it's almost like a perk or
Okay.
like a grenade or something like that. But basically it makes your character stronger. To get the higher cards, you have to craft that card, and
Mm.
it costs a lot more for the higher tier. But it's like you start at level 1 of that card, and then it's like 40 or whatever. And you get the next
So
one, so
it's
maybe
like
like
it's a pay to win type scheme
yeah.
then.
And the thing that makes it more pay to win is the fact that you can either get it through crafting those cards, or you can get it through like randomized loot boxes. And so you can get loot boxes by paying in-game currency. But like a good example is like maybe one loot box is like 4,000, like for the ground soldiers, it's like 4,000
Okay.
like in-game currency, and you maybe get like 300 or 200 after a game. So it's kind of hard to procure that many points to craft it. And when you go into loot boxes, it's random, so you might get something that's really good or something that's like useless.
Mm.
So what was happening is that you could actually pay money into the game to get more loot boxes, and the more loot boxes you get, of course, you get more chances of getting higher stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
those higher stuff is not just cosmetic; those things are actually gonna make your character stronger. And so people were getting a lot early bonuses by just paying money to the game. So that's why a lot of people were pissed off
Mm.
at it. Um, so my opinion on it is like I really didn't care because I was gonna buy the game anyways, and I was just gonna play a lot and not really care. And plus, other games are kind of done the same situation. Like I think FIFA's the one who's done it the most because they have a feature.
Okay.
It's called Ultimate Team, and basically it's like
Mm-hmm.
it's the same thing. Instead of getting like things for your character, you get soccer players, and of course, um, to the packs that have like the most expensive they basically have like packs that like okay within this pack it's a little bit more expensive, but you get a higher chance of getting rare soccer players, which are like very well rated players in the game. And
Mm-hmm.
so that system for that game has been there for like freaking I don't know 4 to 5 years, and it's the most like that mode in the game is the most like popular in the game, and also the
Okay.
game's most popular in the world. So I'm surprised people are now complaining about it now because that's been in there forever. Um, I don't know,
Mm.
probably because Star Wars is much more like important IP to certain people, so they get more pissed off
Yeah,
at it.
I think it's just a lot of people are, the games industry, it's charging it keeps trying to charge more and more for things.
Mhm.
Especially when you have a giant company like EA where they're the biggest in the business,
Yeah.
and then they're charging these little niggles everywhere, and it's like, do you want to actually sell the game, or because they're charging like a mobile game. They're acting like it's Clash of Clans when it seems like they're doing things that doesn't fit the demographic that they're trying to go for.
Hmm.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, other games have tried to like. I think the biggest problem was that games do it in different ways. Like I have Titanfall 2, and they do it through like cosmetic things. So I definitely
Yeah,
I pay into that because like I want my character to look cool. I think Team Fortress also does that as well. It's cosmetic as
I
well.
think that's if there's a cosmetic thing,
Yeah,
I think that's totally fine.
that's cool. I'm totally cool with
But
that.
when it's a pay to win thing, I think that's complete and utter garbage.
So yeah, it.
It's like you already bought the game.
Mhm.
It's a full priced game.
Mhm.
You don't if you want to play and have fun.
Yeah.
Part of having fun is winning. Like
Yeah.
it just is. There's
Yeah.
no getting around it. If you lose every single round, you're not gonna have fun.
Yeah.
And if there's someone who can just spend like $1,000 and suddenly they're better than the person who spent 1,000 hours,
Yeah.
it's like I don't know.
Yeah, and then it was crazy enough because like it even went on the BBC because I was going on the BBC and it was like on the front page, not on the front page, but like on the first news articles you see. So it was
Huh.
crazy to get that much though, and it was even crazier that
Yeah.
one of the developers or one of the guys who made the game, he got
Hmm.
death threats on Twitter. I'm like, really? People are like that? Like, I was gonna start arguing on YouTube because I do that sometimes just to like shits and giggles.
Hmm.
Because I think I don't know. I just toast people on the internet when I'll give you one example later in a little bit.
Okay.
But I was like I'm just not too busy. But yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy that was happening.
Looks like the most recent news is that they completely got rid of the microtransactions in the
Yeah, they
game.
did. There's still a lot of
Cool.
problems with it because people feel that the progression system is kind of lame. And I don't
Mm.
really care because I played Star Wars Battlefront 2 and I was like what 12 years old or so. I just played
Hmm.
me and my brother just playing against each other and I had the most fun of my time. And I've been playing it now and the campaign's pretty tight. The multiplayer is fun and if you have a fun game, that's all I really give a care about. Like I don't care about winning progression. I'm just gonna play and just have fun. So so for myself, I was
Yeah.
just like sure that was all cool. So that was one of the big in terms of technological news. That was one of the big stories coming out. And so yeah, so I guess we move to the next one. I guess the biggest one in terms of political news in the United States is what's his name? Moore. What's his first name? Is it Robert?
Roy.
Roy
Roy.
Moore. Roy. Was it Moore or Muir? It's Moore, right?
More. More.
Moore.
Yeah.
And so
More Roy.
I think he's has I don't know what the number is. It's like 7 people who've now accused him.
Oh yeah. At the time, the last time I saw it was 5, but that was like when it first hit. So.
So now it's been 7. And I think the recent one was I know there was 2 of them. One of them was a woman who was in high school or something like that, and she was being.
Yeah.
I guess he had called her in class, in school, and asked her what she was doing, and more. I think it got more deeper than that. Another one was.
Well, I'm assuming.
Yeah, another girl was being hit on while she was working in the mall, I think.
Hmm. Yeah. So it was interesting because it was like in the small town where he was. I don't. He was some position in this town.
Was it DA, I think?
Uh, that sounds correct. I think it was something like that. Everyone was, they went to his hometown and interviewing people, and everyone was like, "Oh yeah, everyone knew about it." They're interviewing people who were like, "Oh yeah, I worked at the mall. Like I was a teenager at the time, and my boss warned me that if I saw him, to go get him."
Wow.
like, like people were like, "Yep, he would troll around. He would roll around the high schools, the malls. He would go on the weekends. Any place where you saw a lot of teenagers, he was always there."
But I also heard in the same stuff that like a lot of people would still vote for him, or like some people were surprised that he would do that.
It sounded like I saw one article that said, "Oh, most people who are fans of him just go fake news and move on."
Yeah. But no, it's crazy because now this kind of because Louis C.K. has now fallen on the bus definitely.
Well, his was kind of surprising because most people because it's been happening a lot lately in
Yeah.
politics and Hollywood in particular. But with the Louis C.K. one, it was kind of more unique than the others. Most people are like, "Oh no, I didn't do that," blah blah blah. And what Louis C.K. did is he went out and said, "Yeah, I did that. I took advantage of them. Like they liked me. Like they liked me as a comedian or whatever the hell. And I had that gave me power over them, and I abused that.
Mhm.
And I'm sorry." And it seemed like people basically just forgave him. Like he's kind of the outlier, I feel like,
Mhm.
from what I've seen. People were more or less just like, "Oh, fine. Like at least you admit it."
But for him,
Like at least you.
wasn't it more like he would have them come to his dressing room and he would have them like he would they would fuck. What was it? He would have them like watch him jack off. I think that's what it was, or
Yeah, one of
masturbate.
them, in fact, yeah, and one of them was even like he was just talking on the phone with someone, and she was like, "Yeah, partway through the conversation, I realized he was just kind of masturbating, and that was really freaking weird for me."
So it's more like just like kind of weird and odd, and
It was an assault.
it
Yeah,
wasn't like
that's
as bad as the other people have been doing, but it was just kind of like weird. But I think, and another example of this kind of not taking advantage of women, but like maybe not being the smartest tool in the shed was Al Franken, who posted a picture of him to a sleeping woman, like pretending to touch her breasts, through
okay.
like
Is that what he
audio.
did? I didn't actually see what he
Yeah,
did.
yeah. So that's what he did. And he's like smiling or whatever. And so for him, that was like that got him. And now you can start seeing like a lot of these people, like a lot of women starting to come out and just say that this has been happening, which is really it's good because now it's out in the air. We can start hopefully making changes. Um,
Yeah, well, it seems like it's. I mean, after it kind of happened in Hollywood a little bit. It's like people have just been going full force, actually, like confronting it and stuff. I don't know. It seems like there's kind of been a change. My mom is part of a couple political activist groups or whatever, and she was sort of saying that yeah, people beforehand were kind of like in her groups where they were fighting against sexism and sexual assault and all these things, and then when Trump got elected, they were just like, ah, shit, we have to like kick this thing into third gear, like we just have to like fucking pump this out,
mhm,
and things have been happening a lot more. So
mhm. I,
I've been kind of thinking about it. I feel like if Hillary Clinton got elected, I feel like nothing would have changed. I feel like
no,
the world would literally be exactly the same. It would just
mhm,
be Obama take two.
yeah,
Um,
definitely.
like maybe a little worse, like in a couple ways, maybe better in a couple ways. Who knows?
Mhm,
With Trump, I feel like it's like, oh God, this is terrible, and everyone's freaking out. And hey, people are doing stuff, and hey, things are changing, and hey, even the Republicans are starting to kind of have morals because they're afraid of their constituents.
mhm. Yeah, I'm just trying to like wrap my head around it because yeah, because there has to be some kind of coincidence with like with Donald Trump coming to president, and then you have a lot of these reactions too. Maybe it's like an opposite and
Mhm.
what's the word? It's like an opposite and fucking
Equal and
reaction.
opposite reaction.
Like equal and
Yeah.
opposite reaction. Maybe it's like one of those things where it's except like in socially that you
I
have.
think it's almost more like oh God, what is it called? Like a unified enemy. Like an enemy, when you all share an enemy, you all group together, that kind of a thing.
Mhm.
Or even just, if everything is kind of fine, like if things it's like things have to be a certain level of bad before you actually do anything about it.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I got you.
And it's
Yeah.
like things
Go.
were people are realizing, oh, things are kind of bad in a couple ways. These are things we should fix. And there were some people who are all gung ho about it, but everyone else was like, I don't really see the problem. It's fine. And then when things got worse or had the potential to get a lot worse, people started freaking out.
Mhm. Yeah, it's really interesting to start seeing that now, and hopefully it gets more out there in the open. But yeah, I kind of that kind of makes. I like the point when you make about if it was under Hillary Clinton, it probably would not have been the same because a lot of people had that problem with President Obama when it came to like civil rights and those types of issues. Like even though you have someone who kind of inhibits that not persona but the characteristic that's kind of going with the same problem like with Black Lives Matter and all these different things that it never really changed anything. But could you say that it was eventually no that or don't say that that's not right. Um,
Okay.
I did like self reflection like logic that didn't work. No, um, I don't know. So but I mean it's just in general it's good for those things to kind of come out more in the open and
Mhm.
yeah I'm just trying to yeah so it's really good that that's happening and hopefully more men can be more intelligent and know that things are changing that they can't get away with the same things they've been getting away with for so long.
I think it's just the old fat. I think that's just kind of how the culture was. It's really weird, I think, to us,
Hmm.
but it apparently the more I hear about it, apparently that's just kind of how it was even 20 something years ago. It's
Hmm.
weird.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of these people are old, so I mean, like, old people are
Yeah.
like creepy. Old people are creepy. That's the title.
No, it's a
Okay.
blanket statement.
Okay. So in other news, in Zimbabwe, which seems like a random country we'd focusing on, but I think there's larger implications for it. So I guess the president who was ruling since like the 70s or 80s, I believe, after the revolution against not the revolution, but like their independence. What's his name? Mugabe, I think his name is. I don't.
Yeah.
What's his full name? Robert Mugabe. So basically, basically the story of this was going on was he'd been ruling the country, you know, not I guess from the Iron Fist kind of, but not really. He was a sole dictator in a sense. He was ruling the country for a couple of years, and recently he had a new wife, and she was a lot younger than him. And
Mm.
so what happened is that, well, I guess before the event happened, but basically it was seeming like that he was trying to make her as like the next president. And what kind of broke the camel's back was the fact that he had fired his vice president, who might have been the next successor to him, and it looked like that he was gonna make way for his wife to become president. And what
Yeah.
happened is that you had a lot of the opposition party not very happy with this at all, and actually it came to the point where a military coup would end up taking hold of the country. And it was funny. It was funny because when I was reading it earlier in the week, the news article on BBC was the army saying that this is not a coup, but then they take over the news the news station saying that this is not a
Yeah,
coup.
that's right. Yeah, I saw that picture.
I found that
There's a guy
hilarious.
dressed in full military garb. He's like, "This is not a coup." He's like reading off a card. I'm like, "Oh my god, dude."
It's a coup.
No.
It's a coup. So right now you have talks going on between them, Mugabe, and he's not gonna step down, or at least he's not doing a step down.
Yeah, that
Um,
was an interesting thing. He met with the military people who, like the leader of the military coup. He met with that person, and everyone was really confused about it. And that's the last I heard.
hmm So I guess the reason, I guess I'm kind of reading into what's it called, in between the lines, but I think the
Mhm.
reason why they're not calling it a coup is because the military hasn't actually taken over. They've just kind of like put Mugabe in a bad spot. Basically, like you got really nowhere to hide, kind of.
Yeah, well, they what was it? They originally put him on like basically house arrest, right? Like
Yeah,
they basically trapped him at I think his house,
yeah.
and like I said, they like met with him,
Mhm.
and that was weird,
Mhm.
and I don't know what's going on after that. So it
It's
sounded like
yeah,
they wanted like a peaceful step down. They're like,
yeah.
we don't want to turn this into a coup. We want to make this a peaceful passage of
Mhm.
power because that would be good for the country.
Yeah, yeah,
Is what
definitely.
it sounded like.
Yeah, so it'll be really interesting to see what's kind of going on there. I think the reason why I know the BBC is really focused on it because that was a former British colony. So that's the reason why BBC is probably following it very closely is because of those reasons. Um,
It was
but
funny.
yeah.
I was actually reading an article, or there was an article that I saw. I didn't read through the whole thing, but it was like, where do like dictators and tyrants go when they're forced out of their country or when they leave? And the first thing it was talking about, it's like, most of them go to France. I'm like, okay.
Ooh.
Apparently, a lot of them retire in France. I guess that's just kind of a thing.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, it was
it was
like
interesting.
it's crazy. Like I don't know, it's kind of off topic, but like Africa is just such a huge place,
Yeah.
and like the effects of like colonialism are like so crazy. And this is kind of interesting, but we in our anthropology religions class, one of the things we talk about
Mm,
is secularism and modernism.
mhm,
And so in the one of the ethnographics we were reading about was in Egypt, and they're talking like is Egypt like a modern secular state? Because what they found is that yeah, there is like a lot of its law is based in like French and European like law books, but religion has a lot of influence within its politics and within like things that are judged within that country. And I guess the one thing that was a good example of it was the fact that you had I guess a Muslim person who was like in a university, and I guess
okay.
he was no, I think he was like Jewish or like a non-Muslim. I think it was Jewish, but
Okay.
basically he went to go marry someone who was a Muslim, and basically
Mm,
the university didn't like that, and they basically stopped him from.
okay.
They actually like I think they fired him, and maybe I'm not sure if they fired him. I think they might have lowered his pay, and stopped him
Oh.
from advancing. And for that
Oh.
reason, so that was like the court. I guess that was like the court issue that was kind of going on. And I don't have the
Mm,
author in front of me, but basically the author was questioning the idea of what modern and what secularism is. Like if modern is supposed to
mhm,
be like a liberal country, then why is like
Hmm.
if it's based on economics, right? If it's based on economics, like
Hmm.
how rich a country is, like if you were to look at like World War II, all these European countries who basically have their countries destroyed, and basically they're it's basically nothing. It's just not ash, but like it's just rubble essentially. They're not making any money. There's nothing there, but yet no one questions their modernity. Like they're still a modern state. Um,
Hmm. I don't know about that. I mean, there's the whole classification of like first, second, third world country.
yeah, yeah. So
A
no,
lot of those get put into second world, I think, usually, where it's like, yeah, they're modern, but they don't have anything and they don't have running water, and maybe they're not in too.
so no, he was more like questioning the idea of like modern, like the modern, like what is the modern? Like it's almost like
Mm,
built, like there's almost like not what is what's the word? It's more like there's a lot of holes in it. Like it's not a
okay.
unifying definition. Like
Mm.
why would Europe after World War II still be considered modern when their country is slowly destroyed? Wouldn't they be like any other secondary like third world
Oh,
country at that point?
I mean, I think it's because of the like, even if you don't have any, well, I don't know. I think even if your population gets displaced, if you still have certain basic things, that's a good
But
point, though. I don't know. That's an interesting point. I would like to read that book. If you should send that to me.
yeah, and then they talk about the United States. Like the United States is this country that has like like they're the richest country in the world or whatever, but yet they have like the most what's it called, an economic disparity, like the lowest, the poor very poor compared to the rich and rich, like there's that economic disparity. um and then
We do
like
have. I think we
yeah,
have the most rich people by population, though, so that probably puts a little bit of a thing on it.
yeah, definitely.
But yeah,
and
there's a
then
problem.
and then also I think he also talks about like South Africa or whatever, like
Hmm.
South Africa and like Israel, right? Like these are the modern secular states, but
Hmm.
like in South Africa you had what's it called? You had apartheid, right? Basically it's almost like not slavery, but like you had this distinction, right? And then also in Israel, like you have what makes Israel like a modern secular state. Well, like you saw like a lot of religious persecution there in all those areas, but he also knows that there's a connection to like colonialism as well that kind of gives them that modern feel. Basically there's a lot of white people in South Africa, and there's a lot of it's almost kind of Europeanized in Israel as well. Israel even like plays in the for soccer. Even they even play in they don't play in Asia. They actually play in UEFA, which is like Europe's soccer governing body, which also applies to that as well. Turkey as well as that. So the guy was kind of questioning that idea of modernity, and so basically the guy comes up with like, yeah, Egypt is pretty much like a modern state because it's pretty much like everything else. And it kind of comes to question what is modernity. Like
Hmm.
if you have like all these different like wouldn't every country be kind of modern essentially?
Mm.
You
I don't
see,
know. You still have some countries that like. Well, I think sometimes it's hard to divide, like just say, oh, that entire country is modern. Like I think Thailand is a good example where if you go to the cities, it's a first world country. Everything, they just have all the modern amenities.
hmm
If you go out into the rural part, it's a third world country. They are poor as dirt, and they live in shacks, and they don't have running water, they don't have sewage, they don't have anything. Um,
would you call Thailand a modern
yeah.
state? The modern state?
Yes. I have to say yes, just because they have a lot of modern things, and they're actually leading the world in a couple of ways, in a couple of certain
hmm
technologies. So it's kind of hard to say no. Um, yeah, I have to say yeah.
Yeah. So, but like, other people would say, well, Thailand's not the modern state because look at all those poor people. Like, how could a modern state be that? Or like, I don't know. I'm just saying that. I'm just like what people would
Mhm.
say. Like, but I think what I like about this class is that, or I like about anthropology is that we kind of get to critique and look at these categories that we kind of considered as universal or like have always been a part of like a part of like human like religion, for example. Like we criticize the category of religion. That's what I'm currently doing with my paper. Um, but like we really get to look at these terms and like these ways in which we've kind of organized our world and begin to question where they came from, and maybe should
Yeah,
we change them or like maybe just understand what we're talking about, or maybe that this
yeah.
is maybe that like it's the only way for us to organize the world because it's we need way they talk about this thing how like it's hard for us to encompass everything because it'll be almost difficult to move around the world. You almost need
Hmm.
categories to kind of keep yourself sane and to kind of keep things
Yeah,
where
it's
they
it's
are.
very much human nature to categorize things. I mean, that's why I mean, that's why even something like racism exists, just because humans naturally categorize things. It's a
Well,
reason that we survived as a species.
I would say this though. I think there's always been categories, but I think that those categories have always changed names. Like you brought up a good one,
Mhm.
which was like racism, right? Well, racism came out of like imperialism, out of colonialism, basically to differentiate the European, the modern, not the modern, like the liberal modern European compared to
Mm.
the colored person who lives in Africa or in Asia or something like
I
that.
mean, so let's say this: the first time a European ever saw an African, do you think he immediately thought, "Oh, that's not a human. That person is below me. That's not a civilized being"?
No, I don't think so because
Really?
if you were to look at like Rome for example, right? Like
Hmm.
Rome colonized North Africa, right? They
Hmm.
colonized the Middle East. Like Rome when it had slaves, Rome didn't really give a shit if you were a different skin color. Like if you're captured, in a military campaign, if you were like I don't know, like sold off by the people there or whatever, you were gonna be a slave anywhere else. I think what happened is that you had, or I think, I'm not sure if Tal Assad talks about it, but we talk about it a lot. But basically, the story is that when the Europeans decided to colonize the world, you know, they
Hmm.
needed like a justification for them colonizing, right?
Mm.
Like the way for them to describe like their for their conquest. Well, the native in Africa is totally not is inferior to us because we have the power to control and do whatever we want to do, and we
Mm.
need to have a civilizing mission to do these things. I think that's where we can really see this idea of, you know,
That's interesting. I disagree,
yeah,
but
go for it.
I definitely see your point.
Yeah,
I don't know. I feel like it is very much human nature to categorize
I
things.
agree with that.
Um, just it's completely innate. It just happens automatically.
Yeah, I totally agree
I
with
guess
that.
it's impossible to say, like, okay, the first European whoever, I don't know, like the first European whoever saw, like, whoever went to, like, found a tribe in Africa, like found a tribe that was still like a hunter-gatherer society, that type of a thing. Because like you said, Africa's a very big place. I meant more like middle to southern Africa, more so than northern Africa, because
Yeah,
contact
yeah.
with northern Africa is pretty constant.
Yeah, but there's
Like
still
throughout.
but there's still racism there. I mean, like a good
You're right.
example is in France during the like around the 1890s, like 1880s to like 1940s and 50s. In Algiers, for example, right? Like in Algeria, you had a lot of it was basically a France. It was part of France. Like it was a département. It was like a state in France. And actually, of course, you had a lot of Algerians there, and you have native. I think they're Pied Noirs or something like that. I think that's what they're called, like French Africans, basically white people in France. And only the white people in France could actually vote, or the white Europeans in Algiers could vote for president or whatever. And everyone who was like a Muslim or like a like a native of Morocco who was not Europeanized could not vote. So definitely you can still see racism there. But I also agree with I also kind of see in that point where you said the middle to south. I mean like I don't think Europeans got to middle to south until imperialism. I mean like
Mm.
Vasco da Gama went around the Cape of that's like the 1570s. Hold on, let me look. I have a globe that has all the explorers on it. Vasco da Gama, where the frick are you? 1649 to 1524. So, like around that's like around the starting of imperialism and colonialism. That's when you start
Mm.
to see them come into contact with more people. And but yeah, I totally agree with your point where humans naturally categorize things because that's the only way for us to kind of make sense of the world we live in.
Mhm.
Because it'd be like sensory overload if we kind of didn't have names for different things to kind of put them in their box.
Yeah.
Um, but I think the name has changed in terms of like it's religion, maybe it's belief, maybe it's something else or a native way to understand the world. But I think it's a natural human thing to categorize things. Um, so I don't know. That's kind of the thing that we were talking about in my class, and I think that's why I think that's another example of like what's going on with we kind of can connect this back to imperialism when it comes to Angola. Is that Angola, right? Is that a country? Andorra and Angola. I keep getting mixed up. Is it
Angola is a country, yes.
is it the country we're talking about? It's Andorra. Oh, fuck. It's Andorra, yeah? Andorra.
For what?
The one with Andorra, those are called the coup or the almost coup.
What?
Andorra,
Isn't
right?
that happening? I thought that's happening in.
Zimbabwe.
I thought it was happening in Zimbabwe. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, my bad. I don't know. I think they were talking about
And Angola is like a little west of Zimbabwe, or like north. I mean, yeah,
I don't
northwest.
know. They were talking about
Zimbabwe.
something on Andorra. This is Zimbabwe. My bad. Um,
I think it's Angola. I think you're right with Angola. I don't.
no, it's Zimbabwe. It has to be
No,
Zimbabwe.
no, Zimbabwe is the country where it's happening, but
Yeah. So,
um,
but I mean, like Andorra. I mean, any African country. I mean, you can kind of see that.
Andorra is a town in Italy, apparently.
There's also there's a Portuguese colony too in
Okay.
West Africa. But you can
Oh,
kind of
interesting.
yeah, but you can kind of see this is the result. I mean, this result is not new to Africa. I mean, it's this things happened all the time, and a lot of it has happened because, excuse me, it's because of the effects of colonialism and imperialism. I mean, when the Europeans came to these countries, they did not come for these countries to make them into like viable states. I mean, what they did is basically they took like a piece of land with different ideas, different beliefs, different culture essentially, and basically said, okay, you guys are gonna work for us. Like, we're not gonna really not teach you. We're gonna teach you guys like how to work, how to create resources for us to live off of you guys. And then pretty much these people who don't maybe not like each other or don't like understand each other, but they're kind of forced into these barriers and these boundaries. And these what's it called? These cultures don't they don't just shave off. They're still on the people, right?
Hmm.
And then the Europeans say, okay, now you guys are free to do what you want, independence. It's like we've been pretty much slaving ourselves for like 30 years and like for, no, 40 50 years or however long the Europeans were there, and now you guys want us to create a stable functioning democracy. You know what I'm saying? Like it
Hmm.
ain't gonna work out. It's almost like if it was almost like you're kept like in a jail cell for like your entire life, like solitary confinement, and then
Hmm.
all of a sudden they're like, okay, you're free to go into the real world. It's like it's not gonna go well. You're gonna run into a lot of problems. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
And that's kind of what I feel like what's going on. It kind of shows again within Zimbabwe is another effect of that.
Mm.
But yeah, I totally agree with this idea of like categories and especially with colonialism that kind of shit's going on. So it should be really interesting to see kind of um, what goes on there. I don't know how
Yeah,
long.
it's
What's
always interesting
yeah
to see
go.
a country kind of try to make the transition over to democracy
Mhm.
and kind of see how it goes,
Yeah.
because it definitely varies by country and by culture, and
Mhm.
it can be interesting.
Or who knows? They can probably spin back into, because I think what's the country? It's the is it Bangladesh? I think. No, it's
um,
no, it's what's the woman who won she won a Nobel Peace Prize. She runs a country in Southeast Asia. Um, I forget her name.
uh,
Thailand. It's not Thailand. Fuck.
no, 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 they don't have
No,
it.
it's Burma. I think it's Burma. Yeah, Burma. Is it
Okay.
Burma? Let me just check really quickly. But I think that's another example of I'll forget that country's name right now, but it was been on the news. You had a lot of not sectarian violence,
You
basically
mean what? I
yeah,
found someone named
Burma.
Aung San Suu
Yep,
Kyi.
Burma. Yeah, like
Okay.
that's a perfect example because Burma, for example, they were under a military, a military junta seemed like I think it was or something military based, but basically it was like the military controlled everything. And this woman, what's her name? Her name was sorry, I just had it. Her name is Suu Kyi.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, she won a Nobel Peace Prize for basically what's it called? Like living like a peaceful life and a political activist, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
she
she.
won it. She won a Nobel Peace Prize, and she was voted the first president of the country like for like a long time, and actually the first female president, I think, as well.
Hmm.
And everyone thought this was gonna be like the change of this is gonna make everything perfect and all that good stuff. And eventually, what you had is that you had the Muslims and the Buddhists killing each other, and to the point where you had a lot of Muslims fleeing the country
Hmm.
into into like Bangladesh and into Thailand, into maybe Vietnam, I think as well. But basically, all these countries that kind of surround them for them, because it's basically almost like genocide there. And so, like, you have this person who's considered to be like the paragon of like virtue and the paragon of change, but then you start seeing
Mhm.
very similar problems in those same areas. So it's almost like, does it really change, or does it have to be such a massive change in a different direction? I mean, you never know, especially with like with coups and with revolutions.
Yeah.
It might be very personalistic or things of that nature. So hopefully this is one of those changes where the people of Zawi get the change they want, and it seems like it's a lot more like, because I think what they said as well is that you had like at least 10 like people within the government who are like highly placed, who actually want this change. Um, so I think they're like 10 governors or something like that of the country, but like
Mhm.
it seems like it's not just like one person or like the internal kind of, well, not internal, but like it's almost like the ruling party is trying to make this change themselves. This is different from Burma, the Burma example, but it's like people within the government, but like not people who are part of like the ruling part of the government try to make this change. The
Mhm.
opposition essentially wants change.
You're
So
talking about in Zimbabwe?
in Zimbabwe, yes.
Yeah.
So hopefully I think that will make things a lot better. So yeah, definitely. I think
Yeah. Well,
go.
it seemed like we were kind of talking about it before the podcast where we were saying like it seemed like they didn't want like you were saying they aren't calling it a coup, or they're like trying to explicitly say this isn't a military coup. It seems like what they really want is like to move on in a very peaceful way.
Yeah.
I mean they had him under house arrest. Like they had him. They could have easily just killed him and killed all of his family and blah blah blah, and the leader of the coup could have become the new new Robert Mugabe. But
Yes.
instead they like are having a talk with him, and they're like, we want you to step down peacefully, and then we're gonna do who knows what. I mean, oh, that's right, they're holding an election in December, huh?
Yeah.
So um
He's gonna get voted out anyways.
yeah, something like that.
I basically just want him out of the picture. Like, don't even try to get involved. Just kind of like just do your thing.
Yeah,
Yeah. So yeah. So I think Zimbabwe. I think things will go well in Zimbabwe. So hopefully things go well and
hopefully. Yeah.
everyone peaceful. So to other news, not really big news, but I guess it's kind of connected to the idea of North Korea as well. You had a North Korean defectee, a soldier who was actually on the
Mhm.
DMZ. He was able to get through the mines and the booby traps and all those things like that. Except he got shot as he was exiting the country in the shoulder,
Mhm.
and they found out that he had an enormous parasite within his body that's currently affecting him right now. And I love, yeah, we love the title. It says what was the first line you said it was?
Oh, let's see. Oh yeah, it says so. In articles they always have like little headers before they have the couple of paragraphs, and one of them is, "Are the parasites endangering the soldier?" Yes. So like, okay.
Yeah, I see. I saw that one right now.
Well, good paragraph. On to the next thing.
So I think what to kind of no two things. So it's a political thing where you know this kind of thing's actually defecting across like straight up
It
across.
says he was shot 6 times.
Oh shit! You shot
It
in the
says
foot.
at least 6 times.
Yeah, they almost got him.
Jeez.
He's cool now. Um, but there's two things with this. I think I like to kind of bring out is one of them is well, this thing is not very rare. To even get across the DMZ is extremely difficult because of I just said you're gonna get shot 6 times and maybe survive or get blown up by a mine.
Mm-hmm.
So those are things that are really gonna be very difficult. Um, but I think another thing that the article talks about is kind of demonstrates like the kind of living conditions that North Koreans live in, and they're actually saying that it's not like their food is shitty or whatever, but they have actually found that like the fertilizers that they have to use is actually human feces, but it's called
What?
night fertilizer, I think it's called. Because like poop has fertilizer, right? When you go and plant
Yeah,
things.
it's usually. Oh, okay, I didn't see that.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh.
yeah. The only problem is that actually it would actually it's actually okay if you actually understand how to kind of get out all like the negative things you have in, I guess, male
Oh.
feces, I guess. But the problem is that a lot of North Korean farmers don't know how to do it or just can't do it at the current time. So a lot of those parasites can still live within the feces and all that stuff, and so people eat the
Mm.
food, and of course that's how they get parasites.
Yeah, they don't have enough. I mean, how do you know how much of North Korea even has running water?
Um,
'Cause it's like eating raw vegetables or fruits or anything is really dangerous if you don't wash it first.
It's funny because in the same article it says that the surgeon who was operating on him said he'd never seen that many parasites.
Yeah, because it wasn't just a bunch of one parasite. It was several of different parasites.
Oh
All
my god. I just think that right now. It's just like I could not be a doctor. I could not do it.
yeah, I couldn't be a certain. There are certain types of doctors that I could never be. Just
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, it kind of demonstrates that where it's just like North Korea is in a very shitty spot. Didn't. Um.
wow.
um. so so yeah, I mean, and I think with North Korea as well, I mean, to even demonstrate like how bad it is, like they run out of power like daily, like it's not even like a thing, like it's normal for like to for them to run out of power.
Mhm. You know, it kind of occurs to me, North Korea is in a kind of similar position to ancient Europe when it
Ooh,
comes to certain
I
things.
hold on,
I guess it's different but similar.
I want to hear this argument. Let's go.
Where,
Let's go.
oh, okay, okay, no. I mean in one very specific way, not in a
Okay.
lot of ways.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, so in ancient Europe, you know, when it came to diseases,
Okay.
there were certain diseases where it was like it was spread by having your toilets right next to where your water supply is, things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
There were a lot of diseases caused this way, and there were doctors who started to think about it, and they're like, "Hey, I think this might be the cause." But at the time, people were like, "No, we don't talk about that. That's disgusting. Why
It's
are
like
you bringing this
cholera.
up?"
Cholera, right?
There are many diseases. Like I mean,
Okay.
like seriously, you can get so many different parasites and diseases from that, just that. And so like I said, similar but different. So North Korea is also kind of having that same problem where it's like, hey, you guys need to stop doing these things, but they don't want to say it to their citizens because but it's not because, oh, it's gross, don't talk about it. It's like, oh no, we're too glorious, we can't, like, bad things aren't happening to us. Do not believe the lies. Do not believe that your neighbor just died. Ignore that they're gone. Like, you know, it's like they don't want to confront certain things because they're afraid of how it'll affect their image, you know?
I'm trying to see. They think they said they might have said it's actually like the living what's it called? The life expectancy is actually not that bad.
Oh yeah.
I'm trying to look for it really quickly if I can't find it. It says I don't know what's happening in North Korea, but I found many parasites with having defectors. That's what one guy at
Yeah,
medical
their
school
life
said.
expectancy is right around 70.
Yeah, it says yeah, the country's life expectancy is well above average considering low economic poverty. Yeah. So that's pretty crazy that I don't know. The North Korean spirit keeping them alive, I guess.
Huh.
So yeah, so I mean,
Their god emperor is keeping them alive by sheer force of will.
yep.
Of course, then you look at Japan and their life expectancy is in the mid 80s, and then you go,
But then again, they committed a lot of
oh
suicide.
crap,
So.
South Korea's life expectancy is also in the low 80s.
Yeah.
Man, those Asians. Yeah, it says South Korea's life expectancy is 82. North Korea is 70.3.
It's all that book reading.
Japan's 80, just about 84. Well, okay, America is almost 79, so we're not that far behind. They only have 3 years on us.
It's all our car accidents. God damn.
We should have to start eating more sushi.
Yeah, sounds good. I'll start eating
If
more
I could eat sushi every day, I would be so happy.
Yeah, isn't
so dang
I don't think
expensive.
I've had. I don't think. I mean, I don't think I've
Never had sushi? Is that what you're about to say?
I think so, or maybe I've had it once to the point where I don't
If
remember.
you say
having
that,
it.
I'm gonna take. I'm taking you out to sushi place now.
Okay.
I don't even care. I'm taking you out to sushi.
Yeah. Okay. I think.
Dude, no, it's so good. Eel is amazing.
Ugh.
You need to have unagi.
Isn't sushi like raw fish?
Generally, you can get cooked ones.
Okay. Okay. I think I might get the cooked ones. Wait. Isn't it
If you want,
Isn't it
you know,
just,
okay,
yeah,
we'll start you soft. We'll get you a super California roll. What it is it's crab meat, which
Okay.
is I believe it's cooked itself.
Okay.
And then it's like avocado,
Mhm.
and and then it's wrapped in a sushi roll,
Mhm.
and then it's deep fried.
Ooh.
So it's completely cooked.
I think I've had a
It's
California roll
delicious
before.
and it's deep fried.
I've had a California roll before.
It's called a super California roll. It's a California
Oh.
roll that's deep fried.
Okay. Okay. And
Okay,
then
so you've had sushi. Yeah, I don't know. My sister's the same way where it's like she didn't want to try sushi, so her boyfriend was like, okay, well let's try like non-sushi where it was like chicken, cooked chicken wrapped up like a sushi roll.
Mhm.
And then okay, now let's do the cooked sushis. Okay, now let's try the raw ones.
Mm.
Dude, it's so good.
I don't know.
It's
The raw one kind of puts me off because like I don't want to get like food poisoning if it's
a
not done
parasite.
well.
You wouldn't
Yeah, by
get food
parasite.
poisoning. If anything, you get like a parasite.
Oh yeah, like this Korean guy and like
Um,
from shitting my
that's
bed.
really uncommon.
Yeah.
Okay, let's say it's really uncommon here. If you go to, I mean, honestly, even if you go to Japan, you got to be kind of careful sometimes.
Yeah.
Here it's really uncommon because we have such
Strict.
like large restrictions.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, your restaurant has caused food poisoning in 3 people. We're gonna investigate you. Oh, it's 4 people now. You're gonna get shut down.
So yeah, so I will have to try that. We'll have to go to a sushi place and go get something.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. We need to find a good one in Davis, and we could just go over there.
Makunis. We just do Makunis because like that's
Makuni's is expensive.
I don't know.
Makuni's is really
We're
expensive.
gonna go balling.
There's a place in next to where I live called Mizuki's. It's really good.
Okay.
Makuni's is good, but it's expensive.
We'll have to plan that out.
Never go to a sushi buffet place. I'm not a huge fan of them. I've been to them before, and it's like it's really low quality in my opinion. It's not like bad. It's not gonna kill you or anything. It just doesn't taste as good.
You should start a blog. You should start rating
A sushi blog.
sushi blog. I would come up with a clever name, but my brain's not that. I use all my comedy on that shit joke. So on the poop joke, I used up all my comedy on that one.
Okay.
I guess okay. I guess in like much lighter news, not dealing with shit and like coups and all these different things. It's found that dog owners have lower mortality rates. Study finds. And so there's a couple of things. So one of the correlations they make is the fact that healthy owners get dogs more likely, so they can use them to exercise or be outside and do physical activity.
Yeah.
But
That's the thing about correlation studies is you're never really sure what you're like, well, we found, if this thing then that thing, but we're not actually sure what's causing it per se.
Mm-hmm. And also they've also found that it increases microbe or like I don't know. Explain this one to us, Ben.
It increases the diversity of the microbial microbiome.
Explain.
I'm sorry, bacterial microbiome. I was wondering why that sounded weird.
Explain it to us.
So what it is you have a microbiome in every single portion of your body ever. So like your elbow has a different microbiome than say your knee or your nose or like your stomach or your eyeball. Every different part of you has a different microbiome. Everyone has a slightly different microbiome. And what a microbiome is it's every single microscopic living organism that's on you or in you. If you look at humans, there's actually more bacterial cells on and in us than there are human cells. Also by mass, there's more bacteria than there is you. So what it is just certain bacteria, different microbiomes sort of function differently. So having different bacteria can be good for you. So like I'm sure you've heard of like probiotics. It's like, oh, eat this yogurt. It has a certain bacteria in it. It'll help you digest things better.
Yeah.
It's that kind of a concept where it's like we have like hundreds of thousands of different bacteria in us and on us. So when you have animals, you get different bacteria or just any type of microbiome stuff on you, generally bacteria. And those bacteria can be beneficial in different ways. This study is saying it might help with happiness, or no, not happiness. It might help with, what was it? It was like risk, cardiovascular risk. It's also been known to help with allergies. But that's sort of the thing where it's like, okay, so you look at a bunch of families and you find, okay, these people have allergies and they don't have animals. These people don't have allergies and they do have animals. And it's like, okay, but did they not get an animal because they had an allergy? Or do they have more allergies because they don't have an animal? And that's where it gets kind of hard to figure out. And it looks like it's probably a little bit of both. Because it's not like, so if you have dogs, for example, your allergies you'll tend to have fewer allergies just across the board. So not only will you not be allergic to animals, but you also won't be allergic to things like pollen or different types of dust. and it's just an interesting, it's a lot of correlation stuff. So it's one of the big things right now. It's really easy to collect data now because, internet. So it's easy to just like interview people and to get data sets and to find out about them. And then you compile this giant mass of data and you analyze it. And you're like, we found a correlation between this thing and this thing.
Yeah.
But does it actually mean anything?
Yeah.
There's a whole blog it's a hilarious blog where it's they purposefully they find correlations between things that have nothing to do with each other. So I think one of the biggest ones, it was like one of the first ones they did was as the number of pirates in the world went down, the amount of global warming went up. So pirates cure global warming.
Oh, brilliant. Brilliant. That made me laugh.
Yeah, it's God, they're brilliant. They're hilarious. It's a ton of these things. I think there was another one where it was like the number of ice cream stores versus the crime rate or something. It was like the more ice cream stores you have, the lower the crime rate or something. It's just little silly things like that. It can be hilarious. But it goes to show you that, like, correlations don't necessarily mean anything.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the problem with statistics is it's like we're 99% sure that this might mean something.
Yeah.
And that can be difficult. And you see 99, you're like, oh, they're 99% sure. That's so good. That means it must be true. And they're like, yeah, we're just sure that there might be a connection. We're not actually sure what the connection is.
Mm-hmm. I guess I got one news story for me, and you can share yours. I think the one thing I found kind of interesting, and I think it's on a geopolitical level as well. We were kind of talking about this, but the fact that the EU is set to sign a joint defense pact to show post-Brexit unity, and so basically, says at least 20 countries in the European Union will sign up to a new defense pact next week. Or this was next week. It says that we'll sign up, promoted by France and Germany, to fund and develop joint military hardware in a show of unity following Brexit, Britain's decision to quit the bloc. I think this is also in response to the fact that the U.S. military is also, or at least Trump is considering the fact that they should not leave the EU, but be a lot less involved within it. And let's see what it says. It says that they encourage more military unification. So basically, it's like a military Schengen where it says efforts under the pact will be closely coordinated with the U.S. and the NATO to ensure transparency to avoid any redundancies. So basically, and I also read that I think the EU in itself is very much not afraid, but they're kind of put off by the fact that Trump is doing all these different things. Also, you have also news recently as well when it came to the U.S. standing within the world is also the Paris climate deal
summit.
And the fact that you had Syria, who was in a civil war, joins this extremely awesome Paris, this climate change to fix climate change. And in fact, you have China looking to now become the leader in fighting against climate change, which is absolutely crazy. They're trying to produce more green energy jobs, technology, and things of that nature. And we also was also on the podcast how going green energy is actually going to increase the amount of jobs we have in the United States based on and things of that nature. But I think two things on that, the U.S. is kind of slipping on a lot of things. You know what I'm saying? We're not becoming that superpower that we once were, or at least we still are in terms of the material, the material effect of it. But in terms of the I guess I was trying to think of the word I'm trying to think about right now. But our commitment to that mission is kind of dipping off in a sense.
Yeah, it's that whole. I don't know, they have that whole, the Republicans right now, their catchphrase is America first. And it's well, are you sure about that? It seems more like America alone. Mm-hmm. And that's not really how the world works. Mm-hmm. You have to interact with people in order to get things.
Yeah. And, go.
And yeah, like you're saying, the whole Paris, the climate summit thing where it was the United States held one conference and it was, we should get more coal. Mm-hmm. And you have all the coal miners who are unemployed, who are being offered hey, we'll give you free training in a completely different field. That way you can have an actual job. And they turn it down because they're nah, coal's coming back. Mm-hmm. No, and it's just people very actively working against themselves in so many different ways.
Yeah, I also read a news article too where like the effects are getting worse now. So it's almost like these changes that the Paris Climate conference wants to do, they should probably happen now because things are kind of going to the point of no return in a sense.
It's there were models that were like, okay, we think the environment's going to be this bad at this time, and it keeps happening that it's like, okay, we've reached this date and it's worse than we thought it was going to be. So we've adjusted our models and now we think it's going to be even worse. And then you get to the next step and they're like, it's even worse than the even worse prediction. So we're just going to keep making models and hoping that it doesn't get even worse than it is now.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like the world really is kind of doing, it's like it's too little too late. It's we've basically hit the point of no return of things are going to go bad. I mean, like you can see, we've had hundreds of fires in California. We had giant hurricanes in the South. That's because of climate change. And it's going to keep happening. Yeah. Next summer, I guarantee there's going to be more hurricanes, more destruction, and the Republicans are going to keep going, oh, well, I don't know what's going on. Maybe God's angry. Maybe we should kill all the poor people and God will be happy.
So I think we're starting to see a lot more of that commitment. And people are said, is it a good thing that the U.S. should we be the leader of this, should be that world supreme leader, or should we be the person who just just focuses on America and what America thinks is good for the America? But I think history's kind of shown that doesn't really bode well for the world and for us.
Isolationism doesn't work.
World War II and World War I are the perfect examples of that. I mean, like you have to be proactive in trying to change things if you really want the United States to be, number one, and what I'm saying. And also
that's the thing. I'm not sure that they even do want that. I'm not sure what exactly it is that they want. I feel like the motivation sometimes is very mysterious. Like I can't quite place what it is exactly that certain people are after.
The unattainable goal, I guess.
I mean, it seems like they want to live back in the 1950s when most of them were children. It's like they look back and they're like, the 50s are the best time ever. It's like, yeah, because you were 6. And like, you were 15. Yeah, of course it was great. You didn't have any responsibilities yet. You don't want the world to be like it was in the 1950s. You just want to have no responsibilities again.
And not even
I think they don't realize that.
And not even that, like, I think the only time the United States was actually like supreme, amazing, like awesome, I would have to say the end of the 80s and like to the mid 90s. I would say that was the time where the U.S. was actually the strongest it's ever probably been. Because
I believe
the Soviet Union had just fallen. We're coming off the 80s, which was like a massive economic boom for us. But then again, a lot of those built on credit, so I guess it was I guess all economic booms are kind of fake in a sense, because all built on credit. But let's just kind of go past that. But yeah, I think that's the only time America's actually been great. But that only lasted for like a 10, 15 years maybe, barely. It's really hard to sustain, and a big crash happens after that, also called 2007. So I don't know. It's kind of fake in a sense. It's all kind of culturally constructed in a sense, or it's constructed a lot of like labels and things like nature. But yeah, so the U.S. is slipping more and more into like a more like, we'll just let the world do whatever it wants. We'll just do what we do. And
Which
history
is a terrible idea.
And as history has shown time and time again, with a more globalized world, that doesn't work out for anybody at all. It's kind of bad, actually. So,
I bet Trump would love to be. Trump and Kim Jong-un have a lot of things in common. I think he thought being president was going to be like that. I think he thought it was like being a dictator.
Yeah.
And it would explain a lot about it. It would explain a lot of his complaints about Obama too. He's like, why isn't this guy getting anything done? He has ultimate power. And when he got elected, he's like, I have ultimate power now. And he went, oh, no one's listening to anything I say. But I have ultimate power. Where's the nukes?
So yeah, I guess that was the last thing from me. Do you want to talk about anything else that you got for yourself?
Oh yeah, we had that one thing. I thought this was interesting. So it was, so Republicans just passed their tax bill through the first step, and a lot of people are very upset about it. There's actually like an Americans, is it 52% disapproved of it, and 25% approved of it.
Mm-hmm.
So you have more than twice as many people that hate it than there are the people that like it.
Mm-hmm.
And even for the people that like it, most of them don't consider it to be even a high priority for them.
Wow.
At all.
Yeah.
So they got it passed anyway, and I think this was in a committee, and it was there's a Republican of the committee, a Democrat of the committee who started like yelling at a Republican of the committee about how the Republicans are just doing it all for the rich, just giving more money to the rich, just ripping it away from the poor and the middle class.
Mm-hmm.
And the Republican started yelling back. He's like, I was born in the lower middle class. I had nothing. How dare you accuse me of this?
Lower middle class.
Yes.
Oh, that's hilarious. Oh my God.
Yeah, and he was just like, he was really upset about it. And he was like, you Democrats are always saying that we just want to help the rich, when time and time again we are always doing something, blah, blah, blah. And the reason that the Democrat was yelling at him was because, the bills always all the bills are always analyzed by a third party, nonpartisan committee, and the committee found that the bill would give the rich a lot more money. They're cutting the corporate tax rate just about in half when corporations are already not paying it anyway. They're getting rid of several subsidies for individual people. And what they found is over the course of the next decade, anyone who makes below $75,000 a year, their taxes will increase fairly substantially. And anyone making more than that, their taxes will go down slightly. Anyone making more than a couple $1 million a year, their taxes will go down significantly. So it just shows, like, that's the thing. It's like, does the person actually believe what they're saying? Like that's the thing where I'm saying the motivations are getting more and more confused to me. Where it's like these people, I'm like, if these people, because before I just assumed, they're lying, they're just batshit insane. But it's like, okay, let's just like assume for a moment that the guy actually believes what he's saying, and that he actually believes that this bill is helping the poor. How does he still believe that after a committee has come back and said, hey, this is a terrible idea, the government's going to lose, or the deficit's going to go up by $1.5 trillion, poor people are going to be taxed more, and the rich are getting a lot of tax breaks?
I think, So
after seeing that, how do you twist that around in your mind? What kind of mental gymnastics do you have to go through to believe what you say?
I think a couple things. So I think one of the things is the fact when you look at Reaganomics, like the weird thing. Yeah. So again, I've still looked into it. And it just doesn't make any sense. I think a lot of people think that.
No, not trickle down.
I think that a lot of people think that trickle down actually worked because, again, correlation. Reagan, 80s, America prosperous, very rich, Stranger Things. You know what I'm saying?
Stranger Things.
So I think a lot of people don't actually understand the fact that Reaganomics doesn't work, but they had that correlation. Well, Reaganomics was in the 80s, and we had the 80s boom, the economic boom, and people don't think, well, that was a separate thing. It was more like credit, but which is, like I just said before. So I think it's that thing. I think another thing is the fact that you had a lot of people who are connected to very, they're very connected to like these rich people, like the guys that I'm from the lower middle class. Well, yeah, you're still middle class, so you still have that perception of like, we're doing the right things. Like, for us to make things better, the rich have to have the money to start doing things. I think it's those two things.
That makes sense to me. So it's, you think they just absolutely believe in trickle down somehow?
Yeah, I mean.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, but I mean, like, you have to be like. For myself, I tried looking into like why it doesn't work, and the only reason is, well, it actually doesn't trickle down. But like, I was trying to look to see why Reaganomics failed, and it's just kind of like, I don't really know. It just doesn't work. You look at these models. It's
Well,
like,
okay, so if you look at the breakdown of how people spend money based on their economic class,
yeah.
if poor people the lowest, like lower income, get more money,
Mm.
what they do is spend it because hey, I can afford food now. Hey, I can afford that thing that broke, like that thing that broke 3 years ago that I've been like just kind of have it taped together. I can buy a new one. So if you give money to poor people, it gets spent. It gets immediately thrown into the economy, like right away.
Because they need to
If
use it. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, because they need to use it.
That makes
If you
sense.
give money to middle class, then it's the sort of range where it's like the middle class, they still buy luxuries and things.
Mm.
Middle class don't tend to invest very much money just in general. So while they may already be able to have like all of their necessities, the first thing they do with more money is spend it. You spend it on luxuries and things, like
Or save
even
it.
very mild luxuries. It Americans don't save very much. The average savings account of Americans is
But they
really
save though.
small.
They save. I mean, the fact that you're saving means you're using money towards something else. So usually,
Yeah,
yeah, you have
but
surplus. Yeah.
so generally with the middle class, the first thing they do is spend it on some kind of luxury. You know, oh, I want a new phone. I want to fix my windshield. You know, I want to fix the car. When you give money to rich people, they already have all the luxuries that they want. I mean, like the super rich.
Yeah.
They already have all their necessities. Obviously, they have their food and their water and their housing. They already have all their luxuries. They're not buying any more than they already would have.
Hmm.
So what they do is they either invest it or they save it,
Yeah.
which doesn't go into the economy. It only really benefits themselves.
Hmm.
Now, if they invest it by building a new company, then it'll possibly make more jobs if the company survives.
Hmm.
But if they invest in like the stock market, then it doesn't really do anything. If they just put it in a savings account, it doesn't really do anything.
Hmm.
And when you get to the super ultra rich, like the multi-billionaires, they have more money than they can spend.
Yeah.
If you give them more money, it will do nothing. It will sit in a bank collecting dust.
Hmm.
So consequently, if you're just like, if we give money to the rich, the economy will be boosted. Doesn't make any sense.
Hmm.
If you give money to the poor, they're going to spend it at a large corporation, and then the money will go to the rich.
Hmm.
It'll pump everyone up. You have to do it from the bottom up.
And I like what you kind of like, especially with the poor. I like to bring in like an historical context, kind of like a good example like is in Russia. Like one of the books I'm reading now for that class is called Village Life in Late Tsar's Russia by, oh my god, it's a weird Russian name. It's Olga Simayova Tinia Shadnaskia.
God, that was a long name.
Oh my
Okay.
god. Yeah. So within her book, she follows kind of like peasant, like village life during the post-emancipation. So in Russia, they had serfs, right? Basically, like it was like medieval times where the serfs were tied to the land or the noble or whatever, right? And so the peasants they couldn't move, or
Mhm.
if they want to move, it had to be like it'd be very restrictive. Like they had to go through a lot of jump hoops to kind of do it. So these
Mhm.
post-emancipation, 1890s, 1900s. And one of the things that she found, she was like an early, kind of like an early anthropologist, early ethnographer, following
Mhm.
these people's lives. But she found that a lot of the peasants who were there, they would actually spend all the money, so they actually wouldn't save a lot. They would actually spend all the money, like on taxes or like on just getting food or saving up for weddings or for special activities. And the funniest thing is that when they actually did had extra money, they had no idea what to do with it,
Mhm.
because they're not used to it. They don't, they're not thinking about that. So they just buy like they would buy like beer or like vodka or like just these random things. So I can kind of see that when you're talking about like I kind of see that correlation with what was going on within Russia at the time. So yeah, that makes total sense about that as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, and I mean it's really
Yeah.
basic. It's really basic economics. Like if you just take like just an intro to macroeconomics at a community college, you would probably learn that hey, trickle down doesn't work at all, and there's no reason why it would. It doesn't make any sense. But yeah, and then like you said, historically, it's very observable that it's never actually done anything.
Yeah, totally agree. So we're getting hard at the end of the podcast, but Ben, I knew that you would like to talk about this. I sent you a video. We've been talking about the podcast. We've been mentioning it from time to time.
Hmm.
I know you've been building up. so many different rants to this. So I'm gonna explain to everybody what it is. So one thing that we've always talked about is the idea of a flat Earth, and I bet you it's been floating around the internet from time to time and things of that nature on the interwebs. So
Uh-huh.
the BBC went out and to a flat Earth convention. I don't know where. I think it was like somewhere on the East Coast, like in Carolina, like on the Carolinas or something
Mhm.
like that.
Mm.
Let's just say I watched it and I lost a couple brain cells watching it. Like it's funny. Like when I first watched it, sorry, but like it's like a 3 minute video. I maybe stopped at minute two. I stopped at minute two probably. I couldn't. I just finished it right now. I'm like, why? Why did I just watch that right now? Ben, I knew you were itching to like give us your thoughts. Give us your thoughts.
The anti-science, everything that's kind of going on, this is like one of the epitomes of it. So first of all, like the flat Earth concept is kind of a new one, where we've known the Earth is round for thousands of years, well into the BC.
Yes.
Because I mean, so very basic, like just logic at the time. It was, hey, I'm standing on the coastline. There's the ship. It's disappearing from the bottom up. Why is it disappearing from the bottom up? Shouldn't I be able to see it forever? Oh, it must be because the thing is round. So, it's going down, basically like almost like underground, but obviously not underground. And then someone did a measurement, and he used shadows and geometry, and he almost perfectly predicted
What was his name?
the guy's name.
We mentioned before in the podcast. I forget. It's some weird.
Yeah, it was ancient Greek. Have we mentioned him before? I feel like you're right, actually.
We talked about this before, but yeah.
Here it is. Eratosthenes. Eratosthenes.
In Egypt, yeah. Egypt, right?
Sounds correct. Yeah.
He was in Egypt, yeah.
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 Yeah, so he measured, so we've known the Earth has been round for a very long time. And I've heard different stories of maybe why flat Earth thing kind of came up. And one of the ones that I'm kind of hoping is true, because at least it has some merit, is basically they're in physics, understanding something is great and all, but what you really need, you need to be able to understand it at a very different level than most subjects. Like you can't just memorize things, you have to really deeply understand things. So these physicists formed these clubs where it was like, okay, let's just assume everything we know is wrong, and let's try to create mathematical reasons why the things happen that we see happen, but for completely different reasons. So they had the flat Earth thing. We're like, okay, let's say the Earth is flat. Why do things still happen? How does gravity happen? Mm-hmm. How does ships disappearing and the horizon happen? How do why are sunsets different colors? All those kinds of things. All these weird phenomenon. Okay, how do you explain it if the Earth is flat? Mm-hmm. I've also heard another version of it where it's debate club or something, where it's okay, we're gonna you try to defend an impossible position, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But then people actually start believing it, and now we're here where there's celebrities endorsing it, and then that makes more people want to believe it, and it doesn't make any sense. It's so crazy.
And I think when I was watching the video, I think it was okay, maybe people are just crazy, but I think there was a deeper level to it, because they would talk about they felt like they were being lied to. They kind of see the idea of they see around it, they see violence, they see all these kind of things that it's kind of mainstream, it's almost like the things are on the fringe, we're the believers in the true thing, the people who the masses have created this idea of uniformity and things of this nature, and we're kind of against it.
From a pure psychological perspective, I think you're right. One of the things that people love to have the most is a hidden knowledge. People love to. It's one of the easiest ways to feel superior to someone is to be oh, I know something that you don't know.
Yeah.
And that just, when people start joining this, it's people join these weird, crazy things for a reason. you can even get very intelligent people to do really stupid things, like cults and things. You'll see all these like college students who join cults, and it's like, well, yeah, or like just very intelligent. What it is just they want to belong somewhere,
Yeah.
or they want to, they want to have something that normal people don't have.
They want to feel unique.
And I think that's definitely one of the driving forces behind the increase in popularity of the flat Earth thing. But it's just so insane, and there's so many just very basic questions, and I think the absolute most basic question is why. Why would the entire world, through thousands of years of history, lie about the shape of the Earth? What is there to gain from it?
And I think another connection to that is also like just conspiracy theories in general.
Yeah.
Like there has to be something hidden within the world. Like the world cannot be that simple. And I think science has kind of shown that the world isn't simple. There's a lot of nuance to it. But I think it kind of comes at like there's a certain level to it. Like the world has order to a certain extent. Like it's not. Oh, okay, hold up.
Order from chaos.
Yeah, I guess it's a really good question. Like the world is mysterious and strange, but do you think that according to science is trying to bring order to that world? And do you think there's such an order to it, or do you think it's the world's too?
It's more like science is just trying to understand it more than anything else. The more we learn about the world, basically the smaller things get, the more chaotic they are. If you look at like just a person, it's like, okay, they're very like stable. We're not exploding, we're not falling apart. We can control all of ourselves. We're very stable beings. If you zoom into a cell, it's also pretty stable. It's everything there is, it's still functional. It can't control everything about itself. It can't like wiggle around per se. And it's like, okay, so it's very slightly more chaotic. If you zoom in further, you look at the cell, it's like, okay, that thing is like, it's very small, so it doesn't have as much control. Other things are using control to get things to it. It can't control itself at all. It's not living anymore. And you zoom in further, and you're just looking at a protein, and it's like, okay, it's this weird twisty thing, and it's crazy looking. And it moves in weird ways, and if the environment changes even slightly, it'll flip into a different shape. And it's much more chaotic. And you zoom into the atom, and it's like, okay, this thing has stuff whizzing around it. And you zoom in further, and then you get to things like string theory, where it's like, okay, everything is just crazy. Everything is just insane. We don't know how this happens. And it's just that sort of concept where it's like you get order from chaos. But yeah, science is more just trying to understand it more than really try to create the order.
Do you think you are creating the order by categorizing it in a certain thing? And if you cannot categorize it, it shouldn't be a part of science. It's something else.
I think categorizing it helps you more come to terms with things, more so than really create an order out of it. So it's like, so I guess one kind of example is like, let's say you're in the middle of a forest, like just in the middle of the night, and it's just you're terrified, scary, and you hear things and stuff is moving, and you're afraid something's going to kill you at any moment. That's a good representation of just what the universe is. It's just this weird, crazy thing, and there's tons of stuff, and we don't know what anything is. And then science is like, okay, let's look at everything, and let's classify things. It's like, okay, so now you know that it's like, okay, so there's no tigers or bobcats or anything that's going to kill you. Okay, that's good. Okay, there's a couple snakes, they're poisonous, but you know how to identify them. Okay, that's good. So it's like you understand, it's like the world is still crazy and scary, but you know which things are the scariest and which things to avoid, and now you know how to handle things. And since you know it better, it doesn't seem as
chaotic. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like everything seems chaotic. And I mean, that's kind of why religions were sort of made. It's like, okay, the world's this big scary place. Well, there's spirits that are watching over us that live in all the things, and those spirits guide us, and now the world isn't as scary because even though that thing over there looks scary, someone else will decide if I survive or not.
Well, interesting thing on religion, because that's one thing we talked about in this class was like,
Mhm.
where did the term religion came from? Well, they found
Mhm.
Tel Assad, who's I forget what the book. He's written a bunch of books on this. But his method of 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 ethnography is through genealogy. Genealogy is
Mhm.
basically you're tracking the term through history, and I think it was
Okay.
construction religion or something like that. I'll put it in the title. But basically he found that the category known as religion was actually constructed during the rise of imperialism again, and was basically to describe religions like the other religion, like to take
Mm-hmm.
Christianity and compare it to like Buddhism and all these different things. And it was also kind of created around the same time
Hmm.
of as like science. Science was meant to differentiate the belief in faith and like things that can be kind of seen and can be
Hmm.
replicated. And it
Hmm.
kind of came out of this idea of like trying to understand the unexplainable. We anthropology was created to explain the non-European, the outsider, and religion was
Yeah.
a part of that institution of like constructing this idea of these different ideologies. And like you have the Christian
Mm.
religion, you have the the Islam religion, you have Buddhism, you have Confucianism,
Hmm.
maybe, but what I'm just trying to say though, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird for I think this category. Well, I don't know. It'd be kind of weird. I wonder if like the ancient Greeks would consider themselves categorizers, or like is that just that?
Um.
Yeah, go.
Yeah. I mean, categorized. I don't know, but the ancient Greeks a lot of times just kind of used like pure blunt logic for things.
Hmm.
Um. Which when science was sort of being first like when so science has a history where it's like, okay, this thing, people try to use logic to observe things, and obviously the word science didn't exist, but it was like this is sort of like a proto version of science.
Yeah.
It was early science where they were making a lot of mistakes, and they they weren't doing things in the way that we do it in modern times. We have the scientific method where it's like, yeah, do things in a very specific way, otherwise it's not scientific.
I would call it
Like there is a
pre-science.
yeah, pre-science.
That's a better term, I think.
Yeah, I
Sorry.
use the word proto a lot. Yeah, but it's like well, it's almost. I mean, it's kind of pre-science. I kind of like proto-science more, where it's like it's early science. It's like it's the initial.
You see.
It's original form of science, where it's like it wasn't actually good, but at least it was something. Where like one of the biggest examples is like Greeks. So if you see fly or if you see trash, um, trash is there, and it's like overnight suddenly there's these little worms crawling around in the trash. And so through just pure blunt logic, there was nothing, there was no living there, and suddenly it's infested with worms the next day.
Mhm.
I don't remember what they called it. It was basically like spontaneous like forming. I don't remember what they called it. It's basically the idea that things can come into existence very suddenly, which
Yeah.
is completely wrong. And but they were just like, well, it's not there now. It is there, so it must just have appeared. What it actually was flies were laying eggs in the trash,
Mhm.
and then the eggs were hatching and growing into the worms. But
Yeah.
yeah, but the thing you said before, where you were like, can is if something can't be like observed very closely, is it still science? Um, Technically, no. The science community has a very strict definition of science, where even like seriously,
I love this.
like every science class you take, it's like here's the definition of science. It has these like three requirements. See if I can remember them. It's like it has to talk about the natural world,
Okay.
which I think that requirement is to immediately exclude religion. Honestly, I think that's the only reason I can think of.
Yeah.
It has to talk about the natural world. It has to um no, I don't remember. Screw it. I remembered two of them, and then I just forgot the second one. That's okay.
Yeah.
There's like these three requirements where it's like it has to have these three things, and then it also has to follow the scientific method.
Mhm.
That might actually be one of the requirements. I don't remember. Um, it's like if you try to publish a paper and you kind of if you don't have these requirements, basically it'll immediately be rejected.
Yeah.
And there was actually a court case about this where it was like something religious was trying to be taught in school under the heading of science, and the judge used those three rules for science and said it's not scientific because it doesn't do whatever one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So I just find that class very interesting because we really get to question like these categories, and we always think these categories were always with us. We find that a lot of the categories we have now were constructed around the same time, around the time that Europeans start to explore more of the world that they were not used to, and dealing with now imperialism, starting taking over these different people, different cultures, and they had to find some way to categorize them in a way that kind of fit that they felt that the world worked in, which is the European at top and everyone else on the bottom. So they needed to build these ideas, these definitions of categories of like religion, science. We have the science, they have like the religion, the belief. We have the scientific method, they have these weird things. And some people would say that like these people even have science. They can build a canoe, they can do these things, but they don't. They don't use science. They use something else.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, that if someone like with the modern definition of science today went back, they would say that. Even now, I mean, it's like, yeah, they aren't really using science. But I think the difference is they wouldn't say, and they can't learn it. They're too backwards. They're too gone. Like they're too foreign. I think it'd be like, yeah, we can teach it to them. But like building a canoe is more engineering than science.
But
I
it's
don't
science,
know.
though. It's replicating something and creating a technology to do an act, though. So it's science.
Engineering is actually outside of science. Engineering is like the application of science. Like I said, there's a really strict definition of science now. You have to.
Damn.
Has to.
Yeah.
Yeah, like legitimately. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just like these high talks, and it's really interesting. Especially talking to a scientist.
Yeah.
I like to say you guys are.
Yeah, I like that we have a difference of like we have different very different subjects. Helps a lot. You have a lot of insight that I didn't know about anything you just talked about. That's cool.
And a lot of the natural world. I don't understand what what I can't even
Bacterial microbiome.
I don't know. It's too late in the night to say that right now for myself.
It's microbiome. It's just a biome of microbes, but it's bacterial in nature.
I'll just call it little spirit things in my body. I'll be like the Greeks, or like there's humors in my body and I have to bleed them out because there's bad humors. Good old history talk. Yeah, so I guess that's kind of all for me. Ben, do you have anything else to add to the world?
No, I'm good.
Okay, everyone. I hope you guys enjoy the podcast. We had good talks. We talked. The new word I learned today was Jupiterianism. Have you heard that word?
Okay.
Before? It's like above.
Jupiterianism?
I don't know. I think that's what the word is. I was talking to our professor and he used that word. I had to go like.
Okay.
I had to use that. It's high talk, I guess. We talked a lot of high stuff. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the podcast, and hopefully this podcast will come out on a Saturday. Last time actually pretty well. My internet held up to work it, upload like Saturday midday.
What does Jupiterianism mean?
Oh, it means like being above everything. Like,
oh, okay.
Yeah. So,
Jupiterianism?
Something like that. I might be misquoting. But
that's okay.
What was I saying before Ben messed me up? Just kidding. Yeah. So hopefully this podcast might come out tomorrow. It's getting kind of late, so if it doesn't come out by like midday tomorrow, it will come out definitely Sunday. And this might.
Yeah, I'm sure. Telling them in the podcast probably. I don't know if they're gonna be looking out for it.
I know. I'm just letting them know, like, of what, like,
Yeah. Just in case.
Just in case, like they're like, it's like, what the fuck, like, when are you guys planning to do these things, like, And on that note, actually, we might switch back to Fridays because my weeks are kind of getting crazier, and I'm not sure if we're gonna do a podcast for finals week. Probably not. I don't think we're gonna do a podcast finals week. It's gonna be too crazy. But there will definitely be a podcast for the next 2 weeks. But But yeah, that's pretty much it from us. Hope you guys enjoy the podcast, and we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
I used to wonder what it feel like. Now I know achieve the goal.